welcome
in this place.
you are welcome
In this place.
welcome
In this place.
you are welcome
In this place.
you are mighty
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 In this place.
you are welcome
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 In this place.
you are mighty
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 In this place.
you are precious
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 In this place.
you are welcome
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 In this place.
you are awesome
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 In this place.
you are welcome
In this place.
you are welcome
In this place.
you are mighty
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 In this place.
you are welcome
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 In this place.
you are beautiful
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 In this place.
you are welcome
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 In this place.
oh we make you welcome
In this place.
you are welcome
In this place.
you are mighty
In this place.
mighty
In this place.
you are welcome
In this place.
you are welcome
In this place.
oh we make you welcome
In this place.
oh we make you welcome
In this place.
you are mighty
In this place.
you are mighty
in this place.
Oh, we make you welcome.
In this place.
Ooh, you are welcome.
In this place.
Oh, we make you welcome.
In this place.
Ooh, you are 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 awesome.
In this place.
Ooh, you are awesome.
In this place.
Oh, we make you welcome.
In this place.
Ooh, you are welcome.
In this place.
Oh, we make you welcome.
In this place.
Oh, we make you welcome.
In this place.
Ooh, you are welcome.
In this place.
Oh, we make you welcome.
In this place.
Ooh, you are welcome.
In this place.
Oh, we make you welcome.
In this place.
Ooh, you are welcome.
In this place.
Oh, we make you welcome.
In this place.
Ooh, you are welcome.
In this place.
Oh, we make you welcome.
In this place.
Oh, we make you welcome.
In this place.
Ooh, you are welcome.
In this
We sing praises to our King. Baruch atah mishpachot. We praise Abba Yahuwah for your presence once again. And this our second portion of our Torah class. We want to pick up where we left off in Bamidbar, chapter 23, beginning at verse 10. And we're going to read 9 verses instead of 8. We're going to read 9 verses. I pray that your time of fellowship with your mishpachot, whether you were having lunch, dinner, lunch, your time of fellowship, your time of relaxation was well. I pray that Abba Yahuwah ministered to you during that time. And we're back to this Layla to pick up where we left off at. And that is to begin with the scroll of Bamidbar, chapter 23. Once again, we're going to take up at verse 10, just to do a recap as we are getting positioned. Many of us are still settling down. Our theme for this Shabbat was, what if I won't say it from here, not from here. Kayates. And it means when you go out. So this is talking about when they go out. This theme is talking about in this portion when you go out. So everything that we're going to be learning about on this Layla, as we learn from this Yom, is when the children of Yasharal were to go out. There was instructions that they were to follow. There were guidelines that they were supposed to follow. And so it is important that we understand the instructions, guidelines, and everything that Abba Yahuwah gave to them to follow. Very important. Somebody will say, why is it important? It's important so that as we see what they did, we can make sure that we, excuse me, not follow everything they did. Somebody will say, what do you mean? In other words, let us not be disobedient and rebellious, but let us follow in the instructions that Abba Yahuwah has given unto us. In other words, let us follow the pattern that they followed in their time of obedience. When they began to be disobedient, let us not follow in that same pattern, but let us observe how they did what they did so that we can ensure that we don't do the same thing unto Abba Yahuwah. I don't know about you, but I don't believe that he woke us up to destroy us or to have us to follow suit when it comes down to our ancestors and forefathers being rebellious and disobedient. But I do believe he woke us up so that the covenant would be fulfilled, but it's under conditions. And the conditions are that we walk in complete and total obedience to the will of Abba Yahuwah. And it is so.
And it is so.
All right, we're going to pick up with verse 10 in chapter 23, and we're going to read 9 verses. And it is so.
And it is so. Verse 9. When you are encamped against your enemies, keep away from everything impure. If one of your men is unclean because of the nocturnal emission, he is to go outside the camp and stay there. But as evening approaches, he is to wash himself, and at sunset he may return to the camp. Designate a place outside the camp where you can go to relieve yourself. As part of your equipment, have something to dig with, and when you relieve yourself, dig a hole and cover up your excrement. For Yahuwah your power moves about in your camp to protect you and to deliver your enemies to you. Your camp must be Kodesh, so that you may not see anything among you indecent and turn away from it. If a slave has taken refuge with you, do not hand him over to his master. Let him live among you wherever he likes and whatever time he chooses. Do not oppress him. No Yasharite man or woman is to become a shrine prostitute. You must not bring the earnings of a female prostitute or a male prostitute into the house of Yahuwah your power to pay any vow, because Yahuwah your power detests them both. And it is so.
And it is so. Now, let's look at this again. Now, I'm sure many of us have seen military pictures and we've seen different things. You start thinking, they didn't just get that from nowhere. They picked that up because that's biblical.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you see them in military pictures, and I enjoy watching military pictures, and you see them out in the field, one of the things you'll see them with, you see them with small shovels in a bag.
Mm-hmm.
See, because they realize they have to take their stuff with them. You just don't leave it anywhere, because that's number one is unhealthy, and then number two, that allows the enemy to know where you are.
Yeah.
Because you're leaving, your bowel movements, and yes, it can be stinky. Now, when thou shalt keep thee from every evil. Now listen, when thou goest forth in the camp against thine enemies, then thou shalt keep thee from every evil thing. Now this is important to understand. All kinds of crimes, from looting to immorality, are rife among any army which is on its way to battle. Every upright man, or every upright men, even upright men, may act like barbarians. Hence the warning that Yasharal's army, when marching against its enemies, should keep away from every evil act. So even when people went to war, once again, there was still what we look at as rules of engagement. Not as you would, see if anybody has seen the old movie Rules of Engagement, well, we don't fire upon them unless they fire upon us. And then they can turn around and kill everybody because you up there talking about, well, we don't fire until they fire. But the rules of engagement were here was don't do evil. You know what you were supposed to go and do, go do it. Many times when you look at any of the war pictures, once again, I think it was Platoon and some of the other ones, you realize and you see a lot of the way people act when they would go into the different towns. They would go in. Their objective was to go and find the terrorists or find the weapons. They would go and do everything else. They would go in and take from the town people. They would go in and rape the town people's young daughters. They would kill their sons, and they would steal from them. And he's saying, look, when you go in, remember to stay focused and remember your orders. Don't stray from your orders. And even in this, you understand that when it comes time to that, what is being said is that even a man that is upright and willing to do right, if you start looking and seeing what everybody else is doing, he's saying that you might be inclined to follow that same pattern. So this is why the instructions were put out there. Like I said, you might see different things, say, well, we come to destroy him anyway, so why not just take it? Once again, there still has to be order. There has to be, even in war, there has to be rules.
Right.
Rules, there must be rules. And he said, you're going to apply those rules because why? You are the army of Yasharal. Now, what everybody else does, that's on them. But we have to follow rules. Are you following?
Yes.
When evening cometh on, he immerses himself near to sunset because he cannot regain his state of cleanness until the end of the yom. In other words, he has to make sure that he is clean, but he can't go back into the camp until he has waited that time that allotted time before he can go back in. Cover that which cometh from thee, because anything that is repellent to the sight arouses obscene thoughts and corrupts the mind. Now that is their description of it. I would agree with that, but I also would say that when you're somewhere, you don't want to be doing that, and then you have to come back that way. You'll be stepping all in somebody's bowel movement. You and it leaves a smell. And just think, it don't take but 4 or 5 people to do that in building in the Americas. And they started building and they started putting up, but before they got an irrigation system, they would just basically use bathroom all on the street. They would just poop all on the street, and they would just poop wherever they could. And because of this, it caused many to fall barbarians and nasty. So they would just, do their business on the side and left it there. And because of this, many began to get ill. It got into the water system, and many died, because you have to understand, you're talking about fecal matter getting into water and even getting into sores, and so getting into the food supply. Because if you have animals that are going in and they're walking in it, or even ingesting it, and then they go and they eat the grain, or they eat, and then people go behind it and they use it. Now you've just passed all kind of diseases and all kind of sicknesses around. So it's important that we understand this had to be done. And then, like I say, you're looking at this, and it is repulsive bowel movement. And that's not anything anybody wants to do. Nobody wants to see somebody else's feces.
Right.
Are y'all following me?
Yes.
You don't nobody walk in it. Walking in the midst of thy camp enemies. In addition to major sins, Yahshua army force were also warned against all kinds of impurities in their camp for 2 reasons. The divine presence was in the midst of the camp, and to deserve victory over their enemies. The presence of Yahuwah was indicated by the accompanying ark. So like I said, you couldn't just go and do anything. Everything had to be straight. Everything had to be in line. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
They just couldn't do anything. And I think if we would keep that mindset that wherever we are, no matter what we're doing, because his presence is on the inside, we would think before we act, and we would think a lot of times before we speak. And even places that we would go, we would venture into. Why am I saying this? Because sometimes I believe we don't believe the presence of Yahuwah is on the inside of us.
Right.
He said that he will come and sup with us, and Yahush will come and sup with us. And the Abba and Yahush said, me and the Abba will come in and we will sup with you. You know what sup means, right? It means to eat. So that means if he's going to come and eat, he's going to live and be with us. It's important that we understand that his presence is with us, and we can't just be doing anything, and we can't just be in and everywhere. Are y'all following?
Yes.
Very important that we understand this. And it is so. Now, that thou not deliver unto his master. The connection with the preceding portion is that in time of war, a slave might flee from his master to the enemy's camp. Now, once again, this is where we get a lot of, you're going to get a lot of negative feedback. You have to understand, when they were talking about slavery in that time, when they were in war, we're not talking about slavery as our ancestors and forefathers endured it. Mm-hmm. Yes, they had slaves in that time, and everybody didn't want to be a slave. Everybody didn't want to be in that, because remember, whenever they went to war, whenever they went into a city and they conquered it, they were and could take slaves when it was permissible and when it was allowed. So if they had a slave, or if a slave ran to them, it was not for them to turn that slave back over, but for them to basically keep that slave. Now listen how it reads out. That thou shalt not deliver unto his master a bondman that is escaped from his master unto thee. He shall dwell with thee in the midst of thee, in the one place which he shall choose within one of thy gates, where it liketh him best. Thou shalt not wrong him. There shall be no harlot of the daughters of Yasharal, neither shall there be a sodomite of the sons of Yasharal. Now, once again, you have to understand, this is a person fleeing. This is a person that is looking for protection.
Mhm.
And they want to dwell. In other words, this is a person that's defecting from that way of life. Because if anybody's coming and they're following you, it is not just because they just want to be with you, but it's also because they want the lifestyle that you have. And encompasses in that lifestyle is not just, a warm bed to sleep in and better clothes to wear, but it's also the whole lifestyle. In other words, it's how I worship. It is how I esteem Abba Yahuwah. These are the very things as well that had to be followed, because you just didn't take somebody and you just didn't turn them over. But you have to understand, if they came to them, the whole purpose was because they were looking for a whole lifestyle change. And they wanted to follow Abba Yahuwah. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
It's very important for us to understand that. Now, it goes on to talk about harlotry. Now, no harlot of the daughters of Yasharal. This is addressed to the Yasharalite authorities, that they should not allow any kind of prostitution, such as was sanctioned among other nations. The Targum explains as, and Yahizraelite woman may not become the Isha of a slave. So she couldn't go and just be doing any and everything, and then she couldn't be the Isha of a slave. Are y'all following?
Yes.
Couldn't do that. Now, the hire of a harlot. Harlots used to devote some of their earnings to religious objects and orders, as they believed to expiate their sins and continue in their way of living. For this reason, the hire of a harlot was unacceptable as an offering in the house of Yahuwah. If the man gave her a lamb, it was disqualified as a sacrifice. So they couldn't do it. Now, this is going to crunch many of people's toes that believe that it's all right to accept anything, especially when you come talking about offering it unto Abba Yahuwah. Now, someone will say, well, what if they give it to you for your personal use? If it's for you, you spend it or do whatever. But I believe your conscience has to be to convict you or not. But when you have people that were out there, when we were in Christianity, that said, well, if the drug dealer give me money, I'll take it and I'll pray over it and offer it up. That's wrong.
Right.
Are y'all following me? That is wrong. And even though we know they are not right, you still cannot make excuses and try to follow the word or follow the writings and still use it as a means, because it is wrong. That is wrong. If someone comes to you and they are outside of truth and they are doing whatever they want to do, and especially, now mind you, harlots, we know what harlots do, prostitutes do. And they come and they say, well, I want to offer this or I want to buy this. No, you cannot, because your hands are dirty. Remember in Mishlei 15:8, the sacrifices or the slaughtering of the wicked is an abomination, hateful and exceedingly offensive unto you, Abba Yahuwah. But the prayer of the upright is his delight.
Yes.
We have to be careful in what we accept and then turn around and try to offer it unto Abba Yahuwah, because it is not acceptable.
Right.
Because you have to understand, think about if you accept that and you take it and offer it to Yahuwah, then that individual does not believe they have to change.
Right.
They feel like, well, my life is straight. Why should I change? If my offering is acceptable, then my lifestyle should be acceptable, which is error. It is wrong. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
That is wrong. You cannot do that. Now, once again, look at what it tells us. Harlots used to devote some of their earnings to religious objects in order, as they believed to expiate their sins and continue in their way of living. Once again, it's almost like you're buying your sin. You're paying for your sins to be forgiven. That's not so.
Right.
And this is why, once again, Christianity is in error when they do these things, because they allow drug dealers, they allow people they know that work their body to do what they do, and they say, we're going to keep praying for you. You just keep coming. You don't want them to keep coming because you want them to be delivered. You want them to keep coming because they keep lining your pockets. Because you have to be able to say, no, I can't accept your offering, because if you're not willing to give your life, turn your life over and walk in truth, then your offering is you. I can't accept your offering, just like I won't accept you until you walk in truth. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
This is important for us to understand. And so they felt like they could continue in their way of living. But when you reject it, that makes people think. For this reason, the hire of a harlot was unacceptable as an offering in the house of Yahuwah. The man gave her a lamb, it was disqualified as a sacrifice. You get a lamb, okay, I'm gonna give it to you because I want this. You know how they come in, bless me, Pastor. And they come up in there and they pray over them and they do all this stuff and send them out, and they just they still sinning just like the leaders still sinning, because as long as you still continue to promote and continue to push Christianity, you're in error. And you just continue to perpetuate them and continue to accept them in their ways because it's more profitable.
Right.
That's heartless. So once again, it's important that we understand we can't accept it either. People coming in and they're in and out and they say, because I'm living this, and I'm doing what I got to do, but I do want to give. No, you got to be able to know. You would wonder, how do you know? Because everybody knew these people were doing what they were doing.
Right.
It wasn't a secret. So it's important that we understand these things. And it is so. No, it's a hard pill to swallow, but it is the truth. Or the price of a dog. Hunters and watchmen of the city walls used to rear fierce dogs which attacked persons. The owner therefore offered the price for religious purpose as a ransom for their souls. Is being set up here. Order. You could just do any old thing. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Just like today, people have vicious and malicious dogs. Thou art not to bring the harlot or the price of a dog into the house of Yahuwah thy Savior for any vow, for even both these are an abomination unto Yahuwah thy Savior. Once again, are you looking at this?
Yes.
Very important. Now, or the price of a dog. Hunters and watchmen of the city walls used to rear force of fierce dogs which attacked persons. Just like today. People raise dogs to be mean and to bite folk. Yeah, they do. The owners therefore offered the price of the dogs for some religious purpose as a ransom for their souls. After the dog done went and mauled somebody, now you want to offer the dog up for the ransom. That's not right. Common sense would say, you're living in a community with people. Why would you raise a dog? Now, I understand we have dogs. Now, you have to understand something about dogs. Anybody that has any kind of knowledge about dogs, have ever had any kind of dogs, you don't even have to raise a dog to be mean. If you just have that dog from birth and show them you are their master and their protector, they will protect you. They will wag their tail at everybody, and they'll sit there and be just as calm. But let them same people do something to you, they will turn right around and they will be vicious.
Right.
They will show them, oh, you knocking on the wrong door, because that's not what we do here. You don't have to raise them fierce. You just have to raise them in an environment that they are willing to protect, because that environment protected them. That's the important thing of understanding. You have to understand dogs by nature, unless they are out there in the wild, are not going to be vicious unless you give them a risk.
Right.
They're not going to do that. We raised dogs. We had all types of dogs when I was a little girl. And one thing I learned, you can say a dog is sorry all day, but if that master has been great to that dog, you ain't even got to sick him on. That dog look and be smelling around. This person ain't right. They'll be trying to get at him. You be thinking, my dog ain't never act like that. You better listen. Because dogs are a great judge of character.
Right.
And if they trying to get at them, you better tell them, no, y'all going to do something right here. Because eventually they will. And they'll turn right around and they'll be still just as sweet as they want to be. That's the thing. But they were raising them to be like that. And that was unacceptable. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
All right. Let us finish reading. Let's start at verse 20. Did you stop at 19?
Yes.
All right. Let's start at 20 and we're reading 8. Read 8 verses and we'll go all the way in chapter 24, please.
Unto a stranger you may lead upon usury, but unto your brother you shall not lend upon
Usury?
that Yahuwah thy power may bereave you in all that you set your hand in to possess land, whether you go to possess it. When you shall vow a vow unto Yahuwah thy power, thou shalt not slack to pay it, for Yahuwah thy power will surely require it of thee, and it will be sin in thee. But if thou shalt forbear to vow it, shall be no sin in you. That which is gone out of thy lips thou shalt keep and perform, even a freewill offering, according as you have vowed unto Yahuwah thy power, which you have promised with thy mouth. When When you come into thy neighbor's vineyard, then you may eat grapes that fill thine with own pleasure. You shall not put any in thy vessel. When you come into the standing corn of thy neighbor, then you may pluck the ears with thine hand. But you shall not move a sickle unto thy neighbor's standing corn. When a man had taken a wife and married her, and it come to pass that she find no favor in his eyes, because he has found some uncleanliness in her, then let him write her a bill of divorcement, and give it in her hand, and send her out of his house. And when she is departed out of his house, she may go and be another man's wife.
Mhm.
And if the latter husband hate her, and write her a bill of divorcement, and give it in her hand, and send her out of his house, or if the latter husband died, which took her to be his wife. Read 4.
Mhm.
Her former husband, which sent her away, may not take her again to be his wife. After that, she is defiled, for that is an abomination before Yahuwah. And you shall not cause the land to sin, which Yahuwah thy power gives thee for an inheritance. And it is so.
And it is so. Once again, order, rules, regulations are being set up to make sure that everything runs accordingly, that everything is like the gears in a clock. They work systematically. They work like a hand in a glove, a foot in a sock. Important to understand that. Why? Because if we don't understand, then we'll have a whole lot of stuff, unnecessary stuff going on. Now, when you look at this, once again, it's important to understand. Thou shalt not lend upon interest. Thou shalt not pay interest. It is a warning to the borrower. It is a warning to the borrower and even to the lender. You don't want to be borrowing money and then adding usury to it. You know, people say, hey, can I borrow, $20 from you to payday? I'll lend it to you, but I got to make something off of it. It's going to be $5. You become like they're called, they're nothing more than loan sharks, but they're called payday loans. You know how people do them payday loans? They go and they get these money and they'll come if you hawk your car, you put your title up, they will come in if you don't pay it and get your stuff. That's usury. In other words, if you don't pay it at a certain amount of time, then they're going to come and get your vehicle. Even a loan. This is why it is important. And even though it is talking about it's talking about basically you are talking about the mishpachot, you don't want to lend to somebody and then now the reason they need it, they borrow from you is because they need it and then you're adding to it, you just make the situation worse.
Right.
That's not helping a person. I borrowed 20 from you, but then when I pay you back, I got to pay you back 25. The only reason I'm borrowing it because I don't have no money. I'm not borrowing it because I'm sitting on $1,000 or $2. I'm borrowing it because I don't have no money. So these are some of the things, like I say, these are things that are being put in place so that we won't hurt one another.
Right.
Now, somebody would even try to look at that as business. You have to understand, it said borrow. It didn't say this was anything, it had anything to do with a person's business. A person's business is their livelihood. That is how they are able to feed, clothe, and take care of themselves.
Right.
He didn't say take your money from your business and give it away. He didn't even say give it to them for free. This is talking about borrowing money. Are y'all following?
Yes.
The person is still supposed to pay it back, but they're not supposed to have to pay anything added to it. Y'all hearing me?
Yes.
Yes. All right. Now, victuals. This is added to prevent the mistaken thought that interest consists only of payment in money. You know, it's even food and things. Well, since you can't pay that to me, then just give me this. I'll take that off your hands. You know, I'll take that from you since you can't pay. Once again, you put that person in a really bad situation. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Unto a foreigner interest. Renders unto a foreigner thou mayest give interest, provided it is done by mutual agreement. Now, this is talking about a foreigner. This is not talking about your Ak or your Cody. Now, somebody would say, and we know that foreigners at times were other tribal members. Are y'all following me? But it had to still be done by mutual agreement. You couldn't lend them the money and then turn around when it comes time for payment. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you,
Right.
you're going to owe me, $20 to go with that. At the beginning of that agreement, it is supposed to be up front. Okay, I need to borrow, $100 from you. I got to get this done, that's done. Okay, I'll lend it to you, but under the conditions, you're able to pay me back at least, 10%, which would be $10. It has to be an agreement. If it is not an agreement, then it can't be done. So once again, talking about business principles. This is talking about being able to handle business and still be a person of integrity. Business, people that really handle business and know business, you have to have ethics and you have to have integrity. Because if those are not in it, now that's not being a business person. You just now being a loan shark, and if you ain't being that, then you being you coming trying to take stuff. So it's important that we understand that in business there had to be principles that had to be put forward, so people wouldn't be getting taken advantage of. When thou shalt vow a vow, the fulfillment may not be deferred beyond the 3 following pilgrim festivals. When you vow, in other words, the times that they had to come and present their offerings. Are y'all following?
Yes.
They had to pay them. You just didn't get away with it. Like I say, it's best not to make a vow and not to pay it. It shall be no sin in thee, even if the vow be for a worthy cause. The one commits no sin by refraining from vowing, since the person who makes a vow runs the risk of either breaking or delaying it. Once again, he said, look, don't lie. If you're going to make a vow, you better make sure that you do everything to pay that vow. No excuses are accepted.
Right.
And once again, you are not running into sin if you don't make the vow. What happens is when people make the vow and don't want to pay it. Y'all hear me?
Yes.
Thou shalt observe. This verse is added to reinforce the proceeding with a positive command. When thou come into thy neighbor's vineyard, this relates to a laborer who is engaged in the harvesting. At thine own pleasure, thy satisfying, one should not take an excessive quantity. In other words, you in their vineyard and you don't be greedy. They come back and you ain't left with but 2. You still thinking, no, they got it like that. No, even if they have it like that, you still are not supposed to be go overboard.
Right.
Are you following me? Don't be greedy.
Right.
Yes.
You're so greedy. Thou shalt not put any in thy vessel. From this clause, the rabbis deduce that the text refers only to the period of the vintage when the grapes are put in the owner's vessel. In other words, don't be greedy. Don't go in and take more. When thou comest, the scripture deals with laborers in a field. So once again, it's important that you understand principles and we understand business of being savvy in business and understanding integrity. Because if you know something somebody else doesn't know, and one of the things, if you're not careful, this is why when people are writers and people are authors and people deal with people, this is why you got to have your stuff in place. Are you following me?
Yes.
Now you got to understand the reason why Yahuwah puts things in place is so that we don't do like other people do. We know, I can't think of the lady's name, but we know she fought for 7-something years, I think. No, actually longer than that, to get the to get the royalties off of her movie. First Terminator and then Matrix, and they went on and made and continued to make and make. And that lady had made basically ended up getting billions off of that. But look how long it took her. Why? Because you have people that are that have no scruples.
Mm-hmm.
People that are not that have no kind of business morals. Their whole thing is, I got to make that dollar, and if it means stealing from you, then I will do so. If it means taking from you, then I'm willing to do so. This is why, once again, it's important, if you are or do have things, you make sure your stuff is straight before you start trying to share it with people.
That's right.
Because you never know who you're sharing with, and it doesn't matter if they say, oh man, your stuff is straight with me. I don't know you like that. And even if I do, this is about what? Business.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important that we understand business. So once again, principles, guidelines, stipulations, all of these things were put in place, as we know, as the law. Are you following me?
Yes.
So that our people would not do as other people have done and continue to do. If someone shares something with you and you see it is a great idea, you may have the money to do it, but if it is not your idea, don't steal somebody else's idea.
Right.
Don't steal somebody else's idea. Don't take what belongs to somebody else. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Once again, this is talking about it's just business principles.
Right.
Even though it talks about being in their vineyard, it's talking about don't take more. Don't take more than what you were put in there to take. Even if you see the opportunity to do so, don't do it. And it is so.
You so.
Now, when we go into chapter 24, when a man taketh a Isha and marrieth her, then it cometh to pass, if she find no esteem in his eyes, because he hath found some unseemly thing in her, then he writeth her a bill of divorcement, which is a get, and giveth it in her hand, and sendeth her out of his house. Now, once again, he finds something about her. It is his duty to divorce her if she does not find esteem with him. Now, you have to understand, you just don't, because you wake up some morning and you say, man, I changed my mind about this. She ain't got fat. She ain't as pretty as she used to be. She's older. She's not appealing. She's not, she's just not giving it to me. I'm not seeing it like that on her anymore. I'm not, she's not making me feel, special anymore. What ends up happening now, this is where people without an understanding feel like, okay, now, hey, you mean tell me I can, put my wife away because I wake up one morning and look at her and say, oh no, this ain't it no more. I want me smaller. I want me somebody younger, and you got one foot on land and one foot in the grave. Her away because she is not pleasing. Mm-hmm. Understand what is taking place here. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
You don't just put a person away because of that. There is something else that has happened. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
She leaves his home, but the meaning is that she must not return to it. When he puts her away, it has to be for a reason. In other words, he finds, say, something in her life that is not pleasing. But watch this. Even though he objects to it and does not agree with it, as long as it's not adultery, y'all follow me?
Yes.
He puts her away, then she's able to go and marry. But the thing of it is, she can't come back to him. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
She cannot make a beeline back to him. After that, she is defiled. After her marriage to another man, the first husband who had divorced her cannot remarry her because she had been defiled to him by. Now, this is supposed to be concerning a Isha who had been not committed and divorced. The husband cannot take her back even if she did not marry. Again, this is talking about a woman who basically has been caught in adultery, and basically now you can't continue to keep that going. So he can't remarry her. He can't remarry her because the reason he put her away is because she was in adultery. She was caught in adultery. Now, for someone where in the latter sense, when a person is put away, it is better for that man to put her away. Let me put it this way, and not to contradict what I just said. It's better that he puts her away and gives her the opportunity. Listen to what I'm saying. To be found by somebody else to marry. Now watch this. It is not because she committed adultery and not because she's done something wrong, but because in his heart of hearts, he cannot be with her. It is best that he give her a bill of writ or a bill of get. That way he does not hurt her and he does not abuse her. People can verbally abuse you when they don't want to be with you anymore. People can be really malicious when they find no interest in you anymore. And so to keep that from happening, she is loose. Now, once again, when we look at the writing, as she departs out of his house and goeth and becometh another man's Isha. And the latter husband hateth her and writeth her a bill of divorcement and giveth it in her hand and and sendeth her, out of his house. Or if the latter husband died who took her to be his Isha, her former husband cannot take her back. Are y'all following?
Yes.
In other words, she has to remain single, or somebody else marries her. But either way, when we look at these things, there are things in place to safeguard people's hearts. You have to understand the Abba is not heartless, and neither is he without mercy. If her Ish tells her, I don't have you anymore, and he puts her away,